All right, welcome to Creative Doers Podcast, episode 4. Today we have a special guest, Joel Gile. Woo! Give it up. Give it up. The man, the myth, the legend, staple here in the Bay Area. But we're excited to have you on the podcast today, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
How you doing, everybody? Excused to be here with Carlos and Joe and Carlos. 16-year automotive veteran, native of the San Francisco Bay Area. I like all things that put my hair back.
Absolutely, man. Joe, I've had the pleasure of obviously meeting you in the industry. We've known each other for a couple years now, and I'm really excited for today, man. We're going to dive deep into automotive, talk about business, the sales of businesses, selling a business, buying a business. We're going to get down to nitty gritty, just to add value to our audience, right? And so I'm excited for that. So tell me, man, we're in Q3, going into Q4. And so how's everything going so far with you?
It's good. Things could always be better, but you have to bank on the things that you're really good at. And if you focus on what you're good at, you'll always be able to deliver. There's always some improvement in terms of your efficiency. If you could have more guys on the floor, if your guys could work a little bit quicker, but there's some extenuating circumstances like supply chain that everybody's dealing with, prices that are going up, the cost of oil. All that stuff's out of your control. You focus on what you do really well, and you take it from there.
Absolutely, man.
That's right.
Perfect. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, man. Now, where'd you grow up? Kind of your background.
Out here. Family's from San Francisco. I got some family in Oakland, too, but I grew up down the peninsula. I grew up in Pacifica. Bounced around from Pacifica to Burlingame. As soon as I grew up, went elementary, middle, high school in Pacifica. Couldn't wait to get out, 18, over the hill. Got into the greater world. Lived in Hayward, then back to San Francisco. San Mateo, back to San Francisco. So it's always been home base for me.
Nice, man.
Absolutely. That's awesome, man.
How'd you get in the automotive industry?
Kind of stumbled into it. It was actually my second year of college. I had an RX-7. My old man had an RX-7. He had a first gen. So mine was an 86, so first year for FC. My old man had an 84, second to last year for FB. And I remember growing up in that car and had a real pile of shit first car that my mom bought me. Didn't want it, didn't have any respect for it. Crashed it in 5 weeks. Went a year without a car.
5 weeks?
5 weeks, bro.
Wow.
So that
Damn, can we talk about that story?
Absolutely. So I was working at In-N-Out at the time, first year of college.
Shit.
And it was a Pontiac Grand Prix, the slightly bigger one. 91, front-wheel drive, V6, just a pile of shit. Been beaten up. The guy that had it before didn't take care of it. It was an older guy. He couldn't really maintain it.
Right.
And I had 4 people in the car, stacked. We were going to someplace in San Bruno. Sneath Lane, there's that whole roundabout.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dude, I hit that shit at 60 miles an hour, slammed on the brakes. Brakes said, no way, boom, right into the guardrail. She was done. So from there, my mom was like, well, you didn't respect this one. You got to go out and get your own. I was like, all right, no problem. Left In-N-Out, started working at UPS. Changed from going to school at night to during the day. Working, schooling, the whole shebang. Finally got my car in 05. Second generation RX-7. Bought it from a guy that had it sitting for a long time. Put a new clutch in, changed the suspension, all sorts of shit. Typical car guy stuff.
Yep.
Right.
And that car in general kind of taught me how to work on stuff. I never really played around with things. My earliest memories as a kid, as a car enthusiast, 3 years old, playing with little cars on the carpet, looking at like car magazines and stuff like that. But that was just interesting to look. Didn't really like speed, didn't really like the way my parents drove, didn't understand the way things worked. Then you finally actually have to fix the machine. So you have to understand what it does. And then when you're driving the machine, you got to understand how you can push those limits and what does what.
Right.
So my mechanic at the time, who hated working on RX-7s, brought my car to him a handful of times for things that I couldn't fix myself and couldn't learn how to do. YouTube really wasn't that big back then. The internet forums really weren't that helpful. About the end of 05, beginning of 06, I go in to get one thing, and he's like, hey, don't tell anybody, but we're changing hands. There's going to be an ownership change. There's all these things that are happening. I may not be taking over the business, but I might. Let me get your number and just keep you in the loop just in case.
Yeah.
He called me a couple of weeks later and said, hey, I'm going to buy the business for my partner. I'm buying him out. He's going up to San Francisco where he's from. We're going to stay in Pacifica. We're going to do this, and this small gas station repair place right off the highway. He called 10 people. I was the only one that showed up, so I got hired on the spot.
Wow.
That was it. It's all downhill from there.
Jeez.
Damn,
Downhill,
man.
huh?
That's amazing, man. I mean, obviously, since we know, I definitely highly respect you and the way you've ran your shop, man. I think that's what really stuck out with me, and so I feel like with where we're at right now, given the fact that interest rates are rising, obviously gas prices are up. Do you think that it is sort of can shops thrive in an economy that we're in right now?
100%. So in my mind, my experience with this is I came on board beginning of 2006, and everybody knows what happened in the country in 2007. It fell off a cliff.
Right.
What we started to see, people, instead of saying, well, I don't really want to put $1,300 or $1,500 or $1,800 into a car repair, I can just trade this thing in, maybe get $1,500, $2,000, whatever. I'm not going to deal with the dealership, and then put whatever money I've got towards a new car, take a payment, and go from there. But with interest rates going up, price of gas going up, new car comes with new insurance costs. New car comes with new petrol costs. New car comes with a bunch of different registration fees that most people aren't used to. You buy a used car on Craigslist, you pay $300, it's yours. You don't have to deal with anything else.
Right.
But if you get a new car, there's all sorts of associated costs that you're not really prepared for. In times of high interest, all that stuff goes up. And on top of that, we're dealing with unprecedented gas prices. They went up $3, and now everybody's cheering because it came down 65 cents. That still really doesn't help. Yeah. But everything's through the roof. So what you're going to see, we're going to go right back to it. Rather than say, I'm going to go out and buy a new car, used car prices are up 43% right now. New car prices are up 18% just from last year. Right. No one's going to spend that much money just to get the same thing. Right. They're going to spend $1,300. They're going to spend $1,500. They're going to spend $2,000 if they have to, just to keep their car on the road, to make sure they can get back and forth from home to work. Right. And they have to, because they got to be able to pay the bills.
Exactly.
Awesome, man. No, for sure. 100% agree. And I think also, too, given the fact that, like, electric vehicles, let's talk about that real quick, because I think that's a hot topic right now. Obviously, the next 10, 15 years, we're going to see adoption increase, right?
100%.
And so what are some of the benefits, but also maybe the hardships you think that some shop owners may face, given that adoption for electric vehicles are increasing?
It's tooling, and it comes down to education. It's the equipment you need to fix the vehicle, but also the skill and the experience to be able to do so. And a pretty good example, something that came across my desk just a little while ago, a friend of a friend owns a first-generation Audi A3 e-tron.
Nice.
Now, most of that stuff's proprietary to the dealership in terms of the software to get in and fix anything. Anything that has to do with the battery, you're DFO, dealer fucking only. You got to go back to those guys. The issue is not every dealership has a technician that's trained to fix that car. Some smaller ones, like the Audi dealership that I worked for, Jim Hene, Rector Porsche Audi, I love you guys, they do not have a certified electrical guy. The guys at Royal do here in the city, but they've got a 2-week backlog of somebody that's got to come in. So this particular gentleman that was talking to my friend, who then told me about the situation, Audi had the car for 3 weeks, waiting for someone to send a file that this guy could then read to understand what he had to do to then go in and fix the car.
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Wow.
And that was 3 weeks at the time that we talked. I don't know how long it took. I didn't follow up. But the short story long is, the more proprietary this stuff gets, and the newer it is, and the harder it is to come by the tools to fix it and the software you need and the training to get it, it just makes it that much more complicated. Now, the flip side to that is, you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. The first generation Prius came out in 2001. The first generation Honda Insight came out in 2001. So hybrid technology in its infancy hasn't changed since its infancy that much, but it's still evolving. So if you've got guys that started out at a good hybrid or at a good Toyota garage, and then kind of came up in early first or second gen Prius, early first and second gen Honda Insight, Honda Civic Hybrid, they'll have an understanding to the concept. But if you're foreign to it, don't mess with it.
Gotcha.
Wow.
Gotcha, man.
It's great information. Are you familiar with Tesla? Just
vaguely,
curious.
yeah. So the place that I worked in Burlingame, we would see a couple of them come through just as they were coming off, 2014, 2015, 2016. But I've never had to do any sort of extensive repair to one.
Right, because I know a lot of the auto body shops have to have certain certifications to really work on these vehicles. So my thought process is, well, how does the mechanical piece work with bringing that to an auto repair shop versus, is Tesla kind of owning that market where it's a must go to Tesla versus going to a repair shop?
And you're on the money. It comes down to proprietary, which just means whoever owns the authorization for it. But the machine is still a machine, and it's built in a way where a part that can fail will fail. You swap out that one piece, whether it's a rear motor, a front motor, a battery, the capacitor that charges or does whatever it's supposed to do, the plug in the back. You can fix that one aspect without having to tear everything else apart, slap it back on the road, and you're good to go.
That's sweet. Now, I'd like for you to kind of speak on the supply chain with parts itself and how, especially chips, but I mean, we could say that for a different topic if you'd like, but just supply, with the type of parts that are kind of backlogged. And I know even with certain vehicles, like for example, my Viper, I can't even purchase a part from the dealer, but how is that affecting the automotive industry today as far as getting your hands on something?
Top to bottom. It starts at the supply, whether it's petroleum oil to make rubber, whether it's the metal they got to pull out of the ground to build something, the gold that they need for chips, capacitors, anything like that. It starts there and it kind of spirals down from there. There are typically in any one particular market meaning North America, Europe, Asia, something. There's typically probably 3 or 4 major manufacturers: Nippon Denso, Bosch, AC Delco, something like that. And these are the guys that will take and produce and then design and test multiple different aspects of something so they can actually create a part, and then they'll farm it out to the aftermarket and then have somebody pay them to build theirs in a slightly cheaper way and repackage it with a different box. But if you can't get access to the material to build it, then it's tough. Mm-hmm. The second thing is, whether it's a big name company like Bosch, which has been around for 50, 60, 70 years,
right,
they have the namesake, they've got a standard to uphold. They're OE suppliers, which means manufacturers are coming to them to buy their supply to put on brand new cars that are rolling off the assembly line. And that's going to make them more money than the guy buying stuff off the shelf. So they have to take a precedent too. So they have to allot a certain amount of stock for the new cars. They have to allot a certain amount of stock for their own in-house stuff for testing. Then they have to allot a certain amount for aftermarket. And then there's the distributors below that then get to buy everything up. And depending on who it is, out here, Worldpack's the big dog. Then you got SSF, who's the smaller, like local European warehouse. You've got McKinsey, which was another smaller one. I believe they went out of business just last year. City Auto Supply is another small one. And then there's like large scale O'Reilly, AutoZone, those guys that go nationwide.
Right.
They'll have to buy from one pool. And then whoever's in charge of that pool kind of determines who's going to get what kind of pricing and what availability there is.
Got it.
So you're losing availability from the manufacturing side, and then you lose it again on the distribution side.
Man, you get double-ended sword on that.
My next question is, when are you getting a Tesla?
Me? If I go hybrid, it's going to be a 918 Spider. That's the only thing I'll touch.
Oh, man.
Wow.
Nice. Well,
so, Joel, I know you kind of touched on the distribution end of these part centers, but I noticed over the course of 2-3 years since we've been in this pandemic, can't believe I'm still talking about this pandemic, by the way, but it's you bring to light that there's been a lot of mergers or buyouts of some of these parts companies.
It's a lot of guys that were running lean. It's a lot of guys that didn't have a whole lot of profit and couldn't make specific ends meet, or may have ran into some sort of catastrophe. There's a parts warehouse down in Burlingame, IMC, an American Motor Car, and they, for whatever reason, have been bought and purchased and swapped, kind of stayed the same core group of guys, but their parent has been different every couple of years. I want to say like late 2020, on top of everything that was happening with the pandemic, the roof of their building fell in. Oh. They never recovered in terms of the inventory. Like, they're back up, they're rocking and rolling. As of the last time I sold service, they were still able to do things, but what they took the hit on was European inventory, and that's what I left, European car repair.
Right.
So they're rocking and rolling. They're taking care of any Chevrolet you got an old school Mitsubishi, whatever the fuck it is.
Right.
Take it off the road. I don't like it. But if you had a Mercedes, you had a BMW, you need brake pads for an Audi. Not going to happen from them.
Wow.
All that does is it eats into your profit. It reduces the effectiveness of your workforce. It reduces the amount of workspace you have to store inventory that you can then sell, and it just takes you out of the race.
Wow.
Jeez, man.
Great info, man.
Absolutely. What did you enjoy most about having a repair shop, man, for the most part?
It's the problem solving, but auto repair in general is some of the most frustrating work you'll ever get into, whether it's the people or the machine or just all the issues we were just talking about with supply chain, waiting for something that's out of your control. But being able to have someone come in and say, I got this, I really don't know. You're the third guy to take a look at it, or it just happened and I need to get to work. And all right, let me figure it out. And going through the motions and relying on your experience and maybe plugging a couple of people online, talking to IATN, which is the national repair hotline, to see what other people have done. And then you take steps, find the problem, confirm it's the problem, fix the problem, test drive the car, everything's good. You get it back to them. They're like, how did you do what you did?
Yeah.
Really, it's just solving that problem and seeing them go from completely distraught to being able to go on with their life.
Troubleshooting and problem solving. And
100%.
And then delivering that good, that feel good message at the end.
100%.
Man,
loving the process, really,
There's no better feeling than letting a client know that their vehicle is fixed.
And you're the guy.
And you're the guy. And then, talking about word of mouth and recommendations, I mean, it spreads like wildfire. For sure. Because everyone has a car.
Yeah.
Hospitals.
We're doctors for cars. That's what we used to say.
Exactly.
Absolutely, man. I know you just recently, sold your shop too, which is great. Obviously, I know a lot of shop owners out there might be curious, right, on figuring out maybe some type of extra strategy or even selling, right? And so what are some things that made you decide to really start your shop, you know?
So for me, it was a couple of different things. It was the amount of time that I was spending to run the business. I wasn't quite as efficient in terms of monetary for me. Like I only have 24 hours in a day. I only have 2 hands. I only have 1 mouth. So it's got to make me a certain amount. On my particular situation, I've got kids and an ex-old lady I got to take care of. So I have responsibilities. And it's one thing if I was on my own and I could stay up 12, 16-hour work days, fixing things on the side, doing things outside of work, coming in on Saturday. But you realize that you're spending more time to correct issues that should be corrected in other ways. So for me, it was just, I've got a good crew. I know that there's guys that could take over. If I give them the shell, they know how to operate it. They may not do it the way that I would do it, but they can at least take it and run with it. And I'm going to step into something else. And from there, it's just make sure you got all your ducks in a row. You don't want to sell it to somebody that can't get financed. Right. You don't want to sell it to somebody that doesn't have a business sense, that can't run it at all.
Right.
They've got to be mechanically minded too. They have to have some sort of understanding of the aspect of the machine so you
100%.
can fix it and then translate that to the client so that way they know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
And you don't want them to fail. Basically, you want to hand it off to somebody because this has been your baby and they'll know you actually did your due diligence to make sure that they're going to succeed, which gives them a better confidence in purchasing your business.
Right.
Absolutely. And that brings us to my next question too, because I think it's like, what advice would you have, right? And I think that's one of the things too, is actually find the right person to actually run with that, right? And run with that process that you can actually trust, like you said, with your baby. And so what is some like advice that you would give out to some of those shop owners that are looking to perhaps maybe sell their shop or, you know, plan that extra strategy here shortly?
So me personally, I would say, this is just my opinion. It may not be set in stone, but you need an A-level tech. An A-level tech is the type of guy that can fix a Porsche with baling wire and duct tape. He's your diagnostic guy. He's the fastest R&R guy. He's the guy that still goes to school, has the biggest toolbox. He's the guy that can fix anything. And if he doesn't know how to fix it, he knows how to go about finding out how to fix it. Now, a guy like that's going to cost a lot of money. A typical A-level tech that doesn't come from the dealership is worth probably somewhere between $50 to $55 an hour now. Mm-hmm. But we're also talking about a guy that can fix stuff on the fly. He will make a tool. He will make his own part and then put it together because he understands the machine. And a guy like that, while expensive right off the bat, will pay dividends. You will never get stuck on some kind of diagnostic that you're spending days and days and days or subletting out to the dealer or sending to somebody else. Right. He'll be able to help you set a standard. Hey, I need the C-level tech to do my oil services this, and this way so that if I have to come in and do a brake repair, I can do this. If I have to do a diagnostic, he knows how to remove the intake manifold and not have anything fall into the intake runners. He'll be able to help contribute to you running the business, whether you're at the counter like I was, or if you're just sitting upstairs, twiddling your thumbs, doing the accounting, trying to make everything else work. An A-level technician, just to me, it's bar none. That's what you need. But really, if you're going to buy a shop, you're going to run a shop, you need to be able to do the mechanical and you need to have the business sense. You can't have one or the other. If you rely on somebody else to do it, you're always kind of left in the dark. You don't really understand if they're doing it the right way. You don't really know if there's discrepancies. You don't know if there's a gray area. And I'll tell you, the one thing about automotive that's great is that you meet a lot of good people. The bad thing about automotive, there's a lot of shitty people that are just waiting to take advantage. Yeah. And if there's profit that's left on the table, whether it's in the terms of parts that can't be accounted for, fluids that walk out the door, cash payments that you're not aware of, somebody's going to take it. Right. So you got to be in control 100%.
Well, I think that's another thing too, is a shortage of talent, right? I mean, I know 100%. That's a big issue right now that a lot of shops are facing, right? It's like, where do we find talent? Where do we find good techs? And I think that given that where the industry's at right now, obviously there's not as many techs as there once were before, right? And so, I mean, where do we find these good techs, man?
You have to get really creative. I mean, the first answer that comes to everybody's mind is, let's go poaching. Let's go find a good shop, and let's tell this guy we'll pay him $4 an hour more. Let's go steal him. Go find the disgruntled guy at the dealership and tell him you'll pay for his lunch. And sometimes that works. The problem is it's garbage in, garbage out. If you find the disgruntled guy that didn't really apply himself when he was there, he's going to be disgruntled the minute he doesn't like something that you're doing. Right. What I would do if I had to start it all over again, like bare bones from the ground up, you got to find your own crew. That means guys that are in school, maybe even a D-level tech, a guy that can just change oil, can't really do much else. And you want to get out on the floor and you want to train the squad yourself. You want to set the standard. You want to work with them. You want to show them how you would do it. And then you want to be there to watch how they do it so that As you continually increase their level, you send them to school. They know that you're investing in their education and their future. You go, okay, now you're a C-level guy. You got a pay raise. Oh, you took all of your ASE certificates. Excellent. Now you get $1 per ASE certificate. And everywhere they go, that just bolsters their confidence. It bolsters their opinion of themselves. It gives credence to their experience. They know how to fix stuff. Some guys don't want to go that far.
Yeah.
You take a guy from a D level and he becomes a C level. Great. I appreciate the contribution. Thank you for coming in. We really appreciate everything you did for the team. I got a friend of mine that runs an HVAC supply business. I'm going to help you get the certificate. It'll take 3 months. You still work for me. You get your salary, but you're going to make more as an HVAC guy and work less. Go and be an HVAC guy. I'm going to help you get there because I have a network of people that can depend on me, and I know how to train your replacement. The rest of the guys see that you're going to take care of them no matter what, whether they stay with you or if you're going to help them move on. And it just builds from there. It's culture from the ground up. Man. And if you have good culture, you can trust your guys, and they know that you have your back. That you have their back.
That is great advice. That is great advice. If you said culture, I mean, I think it goes back to freedom too, right? I mean, giving them the freedom and the ability to spread their wings, you know, and whatever avenue they want to go into. And I think that gives you, obviously, you being on offense is always the best solution, I feel like.
Yeah,
I
think you even touched on like investing in your team and molding your own team. I think
you have to.
I think that's key too, and really having career opportunities within your organization and giving those career opportunities to these employees that you're willing to invest in will go a long ways. I mean, talking about loyalty, right? And
it's one thing that the general public doesn't really understand about most trades, but automotive mechanics, technicians, whatever you want to call us in general, you have to spend at least $2,500 in tools a year just to stay up, just to stay current, just to make sure everything's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Now, $2,500 isn't that much. That's maybe your income tax return. Mm-hmm. It's $200 a month. But if you're only making, as a D-level guy, $18 an hour, and you're working at Jiffy Lube and you got to do Saturday and Sunday just to make ends meet, you don't have that spare $200.
Right.
And then they look at their repair bill and they go, oh, why do you charge so much? Well, you're paying for my ability to fix your car and my education to continue doing it because cars are constantly changing. But there's always going to be that dichotomy. As long as your guys know, hey, don't worry about what they say. This is what my expectation of you is. As long as you can deliver, I'll foot the bill for the $2,500. Who gives a shit? It's water under the bridge. This $2,500 is your stepping stone to be able to get to year 10. It's your stepping stone to maintain at year 15. And then it all goes away. It's the guys that get thrown to the wind or thrown to the wolves and don't really understand what they have to do to keep themselves up. And then you have a boss that doesn't really support them from behind.
Right.
That's how they get disgruntled. That's how they lose faith in the industry. That's how they lose any interest in fixing any car right. And you see they're just doing shotgun, machine gun repair, and then boom, it's out the door. The wheel falls off on the freeway, or the brake rotor is fucking put on backwards or something like that, and it's a mess.
Man, lack of guidance.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, we just just had a story that we had a shop we know that actually really happened. The fucking wheel came off. On the freeway.
Not too long ago. Yeah.
I've seen it twice. The worst one I ever saw, a fucking guy was trying to put a rear shock on a Volkswagen CC. This is like a big full-size four-door sedan, kind of mid-size. It's like in between the Passat and the Jetta.
Okay.
And it's built in kind of a funky way because this was when all the European car companies wanted to have a four-door coupe. So it's got that long swooping back. It puts the shock towers like behind the seats but in the trunk. So it's just in a really stupid place to
awkward,
get it.
Awkward location.
The way that the rear shocks come down, you cannot bolt them up in the top first because it will compromise it at the knuckle. Tech didn't know this. So he puts it in the top to hold it in place, puts the knuckle in, but it sits at kind of an odd angle like this. He goes to put the nut on, starts to gun it on, and it gets stuck. It's not all the way in.
Oh, my God.
So he's trying to figure it out. He doesn't really say anything. He starts cranking on it real hard. He just says, fuck it. Hits it with the gun, like boom, lets it go, and then puts everything back together, drives it around. Shop didn't align the car. That's why the alignment shop didn't catch it. They send it out. No noises, no squeaks, nothing. Guy sells the car about 7 months later. Pre-purchase inspection at the dealership. When the dealership goes, who the fuck worked on this car? This is unsafe. We can't let you leave. The guy that bought the car is like, what the I drove in. They won't let me drive the car out. I got to pay for a tow. So, of course, it has to go back to that shop.
Oh, my God.
They put it up in the air. They take the bolt out. It stripped the knuckle.
Oh.
So you went from just replacing rear shocks, which a previous long-time good customer wanted you to do. You did the job wrong. Now you have to replace everything that's in there because you got to do knuckle, parking brake shoes, all the springs, all the associated hardware. It's dealer only because you're not going to get a used one for a guy that's coming in and already doesn't like you. You better do it right because you don't want to see him again.
Right.
And then the whole time you're going, That technician let that car go out. He didn't say anything to the service advisor. He didn't say anything to the boss. I mean, what happened if that bolt just couldn't take the stress of the weight of the car? Snap, and everything comes down. You know, while the guy's on the freeway, what if he's going to Colorado and he's camping with his family? What if he's driving down Highway 5 doing 160 like every asshole that drives down?
How do you think technology has sort of like, I guess you could say, changed or helped auto shop owners, and why do you think it's important for auto shop owners to adapt to those changes of technology?
You have to. You adapt and survive, or you just get turned to the wayside. So to me, the biggest piece of technology to change everything is the internet. You used to have to do, all of your labor books would be actual hardcore books that were there. You'd have to write service by hand. You'd pick up the phone and you'd call somebody. Now you've got online labor books. You have your online marketing. Some of the like the service advising software is now web-based platform instead of an actual application. So it's all through the internet. The way that people communicate with you, text message, email, that's all through the internet.
Right.
The way that people respond to your services, Yelp reviews, independent shop reviews, Google reviews, that's all through the internet. And if you don't know how to utilize that, every single one aspect of it, you're done. The technology on the cars, when I first got in 2006, we were just pushing the envelope in terms of how you could make things more efficient, how you can make the car ride more supple, more smooth, more soft, get a little bit more performance out of it.
Right.
Engines, how we can get a couple more miles per gallon at a very specific compression ratio by making timing do this. Variable valve timing was kind of in its second stage as we went from mechanical to electronic, VVTi and all that stuff. So to me, technology is crucial to making things move to the next step. The problem is, I think a lot of the industry itself doesn't quite catch up with the tech. Tech moves super quick, but it'll take 2 or 3 generations for something to be implemented on a car. And by the time it's implemented on a car, it's already way out of sync.
Right.
And that's similar to what's going on with the supply chain and the chip issue right now. Some of the processors, like my BMW, an 03 BMW, it's like a 16-bit processor. But 16-bit processors, what? That was our Sega Genesis back in 1992. Like, that's just way... So it just depends. And it also, if you don't have an understanding of why car companies do what they do and why the industry moves the way that it does, why tools have to be crafted in a very specific way, you're just going to get left behind.
100%.
Right. And I think that all goes back to as well, like even operations, right, within the shop helps. These systems help the shop run more efficiently, right? And so utilizing the technology, utilizing the communication channels, and those shop management systems, right, to rely on that to be able to not only really just get a hold of operations, but also get an idea of reporting, automations, and data, right? And so in utilizing that to your advantage to understand where the shop is at holistically.
100%. It comes back to control, like we were talking about earlier. So before you call somebody, he's at the store, you leave a message on his voicemail, you hang up. He's got to come back from the store, check the voicemail, look up your phone number, call you, have the conversation, give you the authorization, you're good to go. Now, even if the guy's not at his phone or at his desk, you send him a text or an email. Within the next 3 to 4 minutes, you know he basically got it, unless there's some sort of issue.
Right.
So he's able to respond to you without devoting too much time out of his day and too much time out of your day. You also, you've got a hard digital copy of the authorization, which is good in case there's ever any issues. Yeah. But 2, you're in control of the way it goes out. You're in control of their response. You're in control of the information you send them. So the story's being told in a very specific way that you have access to. Okay, Joe had an issue, cylinder number 10's misfiring of the Viper. This is the 3rd time. We've done spark plugs. We've done spark plug wires. There's got to be something going on with the ignition coil. You can go back and look at that because you're in control of the information rather than having to go sift through boxes of invoices to see what the fuck did I do to your car last time and you don't even remember.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
No, I mean, that's great information. I think really too with on the SMS text messaging, just letting clients know exactly where their car is at through the process, right, and validating exactly what it is. But one thing I wanted to touch on too is with technology now, what I've noticed is that you can actually take payment remotely.
Yeah.
You know, right after the service is done.
They don't have to be right in front of you.
Right. They pay it from the convenience of their home or wherever they're at, and then they come and pick up their car and they're on their way.
At their leisure, You lock up the car, invoice with the key underneath the mat, and then car's parked in a safe spot, you're good to go. Come and get it with the spare key.
And that brings us to my next question too, is what are some key features like you look for when, trying to find that right shop management system, because there's a lot of systems out there now, especially new ones that have come up too. And so, you have the all datas, you have the full bays, you have all these different systems, but for shop owners, it's like, well, which one do I really use? So what are some key features that you look for in a good shop management system?
So this is going to sound kind of counterintuitive to everything that I've just said, and I'm all about control, but flexibility. you want to have the ability as the guy that is the end user, the one that's in charge of your shop, to be able to control every aspect of it. And I'll give you a good example of this. Not that you really want to go in and change things, but you want to have the ability to go back and look at invoices. And if something gets left out, you want to have the ability to put it in or make a note about it. You want to have the ability to amend payments.
Right.
You want to have the ability to change text. Hey, it was written down on this technician's worksheet that Charlie worked on it. It wasn't Charlie, it was actually Sal. Sal's the guy that put the brakes on. Charlie's the one that did the test drive, so we have to go back and just anything that will more efficiently allow you to put information in, and if there is a discrepancy, go back and change it. Because I've seen a lot of software where they advertise the communication aspect of it, or they're real hard on the marketing aspect of it, or we have a 200,000 CRM. You can put any number of customers that you'll ever have, lifetime of the business, you'll never run out of room. Well, who gives a shit if the service advisor makes a mistake, or if the options to write the service itself are so rigid that it takes a service advisor 4 to 5 more minutes per cell just to be able to get something together. You want seamless integration from being able to put the customer information in, transfer that into an estimate so you can give them a rough draft of what's going to happen on the fly, bang in whatever the inspection report is for a second estimate, and then finalize it as an RO, hand it off to the tech, and then boom, final invoice, payment, you're in and out the door, rather than having to goof around with anything else. And there's a software that came out just as I was getting out of the game, and I'm blanking on the name now. Really, really good guys. 2 guys out of Canada, tech nerds, but they had an automotive mind to them. They really knew what was going on. They looked at other software, and they had a really seamless looking package, and everything looked like it was real good. They lobbied us pretty hard, and I kind of wanted to give them a shot. Ended up not doing it. Moved in and was talking to a good friend of mine that runs a shop in San Francisco, still in the Tenderloin, just a really high-end European shop. He ended up making the move to them, and I watched him write service with it's the absolute most rigid, bare bones, bottom of the barrel pile of shit. It just looks nice, but it doesn't really have the ability to do much else. And their one thing was, you can communicate with the client through this portal any way you want. Great. So you can send a text message and you can send an email straight through that. And that was about it. That was the most useful that thing ever got. To me, when you're not focusing on the guy that actually has to use it, then who gives a shit how pretty you make it look? Right. You're causing me XYZ in dollars because my guys are inefficient using this thing.
Right. Yeah. I think, just touching on shop management systems, I think the training itself, the software that you're implementing, I think the training behind that is crucial to being able to, if it's user friendly, right? And the onboarding, the training is, kind of will correlate to how effective the shop management system will be to the end user.
I would say, though, that it's like everything else in life. Like we all played sports in high school, right? Guys who played basketball know how to play basketball. Somebody that's never played basketball before thinks you're just running up and down the court trying to put the ball in the hoop. And there's a little bit more nuance to that. And so if you don't actually understand what you will need, the steps that will be taken when you write service, what is required to be on a technician's worksheet, the things you don't want on a technician's worksheet, how you can lay things out so that a guy that's on the hairy edge, had his 3rd cup of coffee and is 7 hours into a 12-hour shift, just get a speed look at it and then go into the next task. Where do we need to put it for that? And I think that's the technology of it, because a lot of the tech companies, we need them. They're good for business. They all drive cars. They're pushing the culture of our lives into the next stage. But they're all about what they do. They have no understanding to the concept of what the greater world at large does. They don't know what it takes to fix a car. So they're not going to know those steps, and they're not going to research it. They're just going to try to package it in a nice, pretty, complete package that they think we need.
Have you started to see what I've seen in the market lately is a lot of these like Napas of the world are starting to have their own shop management systems. How do you see that kind of shaking up the automotive industry itself?
It's an option, but it's really going to depend on how well they implement it. The first one of those that I tried was All Data Software back in 2016.
Okay.
Was it all? No, it was. What's All Data's competitor?
Kukui?
No.
Full Bay.
See, I've been out of it for so.
Mitchell.
Mitchell's a big one.
No, I'm full of shit. It was All Data. My bad.
Okay, well, there you go.
So it was all
shit. Just running around naming every one of them.
Shop marking. Man, where are we at?
When All Data came out with theirs, we gave it a shot at the place in Burlingame. For just a very short period of time. Switched from Mitchell to use it, and ended up going back to Mitchell. And it was web based. It was fairly user friendly. You had the ability to put stuff in. I typically tend to document things a little bit more than the other guy, just because I want to cover my own ass. Like, we looked at this, these are the steps we took, yada, yada, yada.
Definitely.
If there's a character limit, which I don't remember if there was with it, that typically tends to turn me off. There's plenty of service advising software I've seen where there is a character limit, but it's again, it's an afterthought. It's not what they do. All data is a labor book. It's a collection of images and procedures tacked onto a time to tell you how to fix this car in this way.
Got it.
They do not sell service advising software. They have the ability to, just like you and I have the ability to go and work at McDonald's, but it ain't what we're going to do.
Right. Absolutely, man. Perfect. Well, I think that brings me to my next thing, because I think with shop management systems, we talked about marketing too a little bit, and that's kind of included in the communication process, right? So how do you think that, I would say marketing as a whole right now plays a role in the success of a shop? You know, I know there's people doing different things, right? They're testing different things out, they're trying different things, and obviously I'm not completely biased to any, option. So what are some things that you think are important, when it comes down to that?
I think marketing is a lot more important than a lot of guys think. And this is one of the things about the industry. You kind of get not really a 10,000 foot view. You kind of focus on what you know how to do, whether it's fixing the car or dealing with the techs. And the problem is every once in a while you got to take a step back.
Yeah.
Now, most guys don't realize they're already getting marketing by giving their clients a good service, taking care of their customers. They get it word of mouth.
Right.
The problem is when Yelp came around, that was sort of the first one in the game. Hey, we're going to have people review you externally. You don't really have any control. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, unless you pay us off. And then we're going to have people talk about it from there. That then segued into Facebook groups and Google reviews and all that other stuff. But marketing in general helps shops reach a broader audience than word of mouth, than the guys you see going to get your cup of coffee that see you show up in your uniform and ask you what you do, than the guys that work in the area and all the local businesses that see you pass through every day.
Right.
Marketing is a way, A, to prove that you're really worth what you say you're worth, and B, to reach a broader audience, especially when everybody's connected to their phones. To get to this place today, I'm fairly familiar with the Bay Area. I don't know where the hell this is. I plugged it into my phone. If I had something that told me, hey, right here, here, and here, you can do this, this, or this, then I'm already sold. It takes all the guesswork out. I don't have to think about it.
Right.
And I know, based on what this thing is telling me, these guys do a good job because they're 4.6 stars. You're not going to please everybody. I don't need a 5-star review, and anybody that tells you they need a 5-star review is somebody you don't want to deal with anyway.
Yeah.
But if you see a 2.5-star review, you're like, oh, maybe I'm not going to go get a sandwich from this fucking guy down the block.
Exactly. And that's a power, I think, too, that leads up to the word of mouth as well, because I think all that enforces and just kind of, I guess you could say, gives more people reassurance, before they make that buying decision. Because like you said, they're ready to buy. They see it, they're already there, and they're in the market to buy something. They're in the market for your services. It's just a matter of reinforcing that decision and decision making.
And sometimes they don't even know they're in the market for your service. Life is so fast right now. We all have responsibilities. We got things to do. Families, people that you're taking care of.
That's
you got to get up. Traffic sucks no matter where you're going. If your commute is just down the block and you're doing it by bicycle, it's still not fun.
Right.
So the less guesswork you have in your day, if you see something, oh yeah, I was talking about this other, or oh, I never knew this place was here, and they can take care of this for me, and I don't even have to think about it. Boom, you've already sold them without even opening your mouth.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely, man.
The power of digital marketing.
Yeah, for sure. And getting in front of people, really, the exposure, like you said, the awareness of it. I think that's definitely what it is, and so that's great, man. I think a really, really big question that I'm gonna ask in this final one is basically, where do you see, everything we talked about so far, where do you see the industry in the next 10 years, 10, 15 years? We talked about EV, we talked about technology, we talked about
supply chain,
exactly. So where do you see things in the next 10 years?
I think it's going to get really fucking creative, brother. And to be 100% honest with you, I haven't been excited about cars in a very long time, but thinking about it kind of does make me excited. There's a lot of things that I'm hearing about, guys that I used to work with, guys I'd sublet stuff to. Mm-hmm. A lot of the really good guys, a couple of one-man bands and just A-level techs that started their own business and kind of got into their niche. They're now starting to go backwards in time and learn how to fix 50s and 60s cars, get into the nuts and bolts, the nitty-gritty, the mechanical stuff, because they're going to focus on restoration on top of it. There's guys that are trying to hack software within Teslas, because you can find a ton of them wrapped around trees on Copart, and they're trying to get into the electric conversion game. Guys that are building fiberglass bodies for early Porsche 356s or like a Jaguar E-Type, because no one wants to pay the dealership $350,000 for a reproduction when you could pay this guy $100,000 to do the same thing. And when it's tech nerd money, like they don't split hairs about that stuff. But if you're passionate about what you do and you understand the machine like these guys do, and you're able to craft it in a nice and neat, complete package, like those are the dream projects right now. And what I think industry in general is going to happen, like we were talking about with the A3, there's going to be tooling, there's going to be education that changes, there's going to need to be changes that have to get made, from the bottom all the way up. But internal combustion cars aren't going anywhere. They may not be able to be sold in California after 2035, but you could buy them in Nevada. They're still going to be over there. And the guy that has his 1986 Chevrolet pickup truck just to run around a farm, he's not going to get rid of it and go buy a Cybertruck just because Gavin Newsom tells him to. There's going to be plenty of cars, whether it's the enthusiast or the person that just likes their car or needs the simplicity of being able to get gasoline wherever they need to go. There's still going to be plenty of those work done, at least for the next 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
And as the electronic technology gets a little bit more efficient, as it gets integrated in different ways, as hopefully in California we don't get any more blackouts and our electrical grid can support all the electric cars.
Or longer range.
There will be some dice on both sides, but I think we're going to see a lot of really, really cool stuff in terms of the integration. A lot of old stuff coming back, kind of like the way it was in Cuba when the embargo hit and they had nothing but old cars and they had to fix them with all sorts of junk.
Big there, man. It's very big still today.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that we'll see all sorts of stuff.
That's phenomenal.
Hell yeah. What's next for Joel?
What's next for me? Well, there was talks of a 918 Spider. I don't know if that's really in the works. Right now, I got to fix the M5. I got an E39 M5 through the drive shaft back in April, tied up all 4 O2 sensors, busted a bunch of wiring harness, fucked everything you could imagine. I'm trying to get that sucker back on the road. In the meantime, I got an E55 sedan, supercharged, never non-supercharged. Non-supercharged ones are junk. And that one's starting to have some air suspension problems. So I got to fix the M5 so I can take apart the E55. But, anything that just whips my hair back, really. I love speed. I got a NASA driving license from a long, long, long time ago that I never did anything with. Always wanted to do like spec Miata or open wheel. Never did anything with it. But anything that's fun to drive. Trips to Alice's, ripping down Highway 1, going up to wine country. Like anything that just puts a smile on your face when you put the loud handle down.
We still got to do that.
I'm ready.
Man, I was going to say, next time you're hitting that Highway 1, man, give me a ring.
Hell yeah. Alice's Restaurants, that's a staple.
That's a staple for sure.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I think this has been, man, I love this podcast. I love this whole session, man. Thank you so much for being on the show, Joel.
Thanks for having me.
We'd love to have you again, man.
No, absolutely. You guys lead the charge. I really like the space you have. I like the environment you guys cultivate. This is a pretty good spot.
Awesome, man. Now, we're going to look forward to it for sure. And again, guys, tune into the next episode. Again, Joel Gile, man. Round of applause being the show. You want to put the sound effects on the thing right there?
The man, the myth, the legend.
Sound effects?
Yeah.
I think it's the yellow one.
Let's run that back.
There it is. He's a little color.
Jokes on me.
He's a little colorblind. So.
Jokes on me.
Cool, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, man. Again,
guys, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
We're out. Tune into the next episode. Creative Doers Podcast. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.